It is Coriander Seeds Quilts Day. I am excited to show you the quilts that I designed for my white on white fabric collection, Coriander Seeds, and we're just gonna dive right in and start talking about the quilt behind me. If you watched my Coriander Seeds fabric video, you saw this quilt in the video, but today I'm going to be sharing more details along with the rest of the quilts that are designed for this collection. So up first, Woolly Stars. This has been such a popular pattern for this collection. This is a fat quarter quilt. Each of the 9 sheep uses 1 fat quarter of the Coriander Seeds white on white fabrics. So each sheep is a different white on white. I paired it with 2 prints from Robin Pickens' Thatched line of fabric. And my quilter, Kayleen Perry, quilted it out beautifully to finish it all off. I really want to show you that quilting up close because it is just the cutest ever. So let's do that next. And here you can see that quilting. This quilting design is called Mums, and it's supposed to be a little flowery design, but to me it just looked like furry woolly sheep. And so I thought it was perfect for this quilt, and I love the way that turned out. I will have all of my quilting designs linked down below in the description box, as well as information on my quilter, Kayleen Perry, if you would want her to quilt any of your quilts. She does a wonderful job. And I will also be listing fabric numbers, like for these here, as well as some of the solid numbers that you're going to see in the upcoming quilts. So, with that being said, I used a lot of the white on whites for these backings. This is the little Ditsy print that I used for the backing, and for my binding I used the same black thatched fabric that I used on the sheep blocks, just to kind of frame everything out beautifully. So that's what that quilt looks like. It is going to finish at 62 inches square. I always list my fabric requirements in my Etsy shop for each pattern listing. So if you ever wonder if you have the fabrics you need on hand, or if you need to purchase fabrics from your local shop, you can always find that information on each pattern in my Etsy shop. So I will make sure and list to the Etsy shop as well, should you need to look up any fabric requirements. Let's go ahead and move on to Suntwist. This is Suntwist. You have also seen this as my backdrop in some of my previous videos. I love this quilt for summer. It just screams, hi, I am a sherbet quilt and I want to brighten up your summer day. So this one is so fun. It is also my July, goodness, I can't believe I'm saying July pattern of the month in my Etsy shop. So it's $5 for the month of July. If you're happening to catch this as soon as the video is out, you can check out the link in the description box below to grab this for $5. But let's talk a little bit more about the quilt itself. So this is going to finish at 75.5 by 93. It uses a 1/3 yard each of 12 different solid fabrics. So these are the solids that you see throughout the quilt. And then it also uses a layer cake of Coriander Seeds. So my white on white fabrics come in a layer cake version, and so it will use one of those. And then you need a little bit of additional background, and then of course your binding and backing, a little bit of gray solid for those cornerstones. And we'll take a look at this one up close too. The quilting design on this quilt is called Venetian. I am such a fan of orange peel quilting designs, and I am always on the lookout for different orange peel quilting patterns to try out. I thought this one was really neat. I think this would be really neat in a smaller scale too. This is a little bit of a larger scale. I love these little liney bits in here. It just adds something a little bit interesting, and it gives it such great texture. I really like the way this quilting turned out. This was the first time that I tried this quilting design, and it is definitely one I'm going to be using again. Now, for these half square triangle blocks, these use just a little bit of scrappy white on white in each spot here, and then each of these larger triangles is made using a different white on white print. So it just gives it some interest in the background without being overly flashy. Sometimes you want a flashy background and sometimes you don't, but I'm really happy with the way this came together. It's a very simple to piece quilt. It might look a little bit trickier than it is, but it's not difficult at all. For the backing, I used the Medallion print from the White on White Coriander Seeds collection. And this gray is Etchings Slate in the solid. I don't as often use solids for my binding, but on a number of these, well, maybe this, on 2 of these quilts, I use the solid for my binding, and I really like the way it frames it out. So that, I will mention that color too down in the description box as well. So that is Suntwist. Sweetly Shining is the name of the quilt behind me. This one is a little bit different in that I used the same fabric for the background for the whole quilt. It's the little viney print. I'll show you that up close too. And then those same shades of solids that I used in the Suntwist quilt. I used the same solids in 3 of the quilts so that it's very easy. If you like this palette, just grab a bunch of them and you can make all 3 of these next quilts. This quilt finishes at 56 by 72, and it is a fat 8th friendly quilt for these colorful bits. Love the quilting on this one too, so let me see what you think. This quilting design is called Feathered Party, and it is a fun little feathery little design with some pebbles sprinkled throughout. Another quilting design that I always look for is feathers. I know sometimes they can be really traditional, and sometimes I really like traditional feathers, and sometimes I want something a little bit more whimsical. So I would say this is a little bit more whimsical, and it adds just a fun touch to this quilt. For the backing, I used the vines from Coriander Seeds. It's the same print that I used on the front. And then this is the other quilt that I used the gray solid on. That is Etchings Slate. It's a Moda Bella Solid, and it is one that I use a lot. It's this really pretty warm gray, and it just works really well with the warm colors that I like using. The last quilt that I have to show you is Heart Threads. It finishes at 80 by 103.5. You will need a ½ yard each of the different solids. There's those same 12 different solids. And then it uses the jelly roll of Coriander Seeds, which is a fun way to use that jelly roll. You will need your background fabric. I used another print from Robin Pickens' Thatched line. And then binding, backing, and batting, and you will be on your way. The quilting design on this one is one I have been using a lot, and I have another quilt that I'm sending to my quilter, and that's what's going on that quilt too. So it's definitely one I have been enjoying. Let's take a look. See, isn't that quilting so pretty? This is called Love Always. I know I just shared another quilt that I used this on, and my heartfelt quilt is getting this exact same quilting because I think it's so cute, especially if you have a quilt that has hearts on it. This is just perfect. So Love Always, the name of this quilting. I used the same the same thatched fabric that I used on the front for the back and the binding. So that kept everything coordinating very well. And I think this is so pretty. Love the way that turned out. This is a really pretty warm fabric, again, to pair with those solids. And then each of these little stripes in these hearts is made of a different white on white fabric. And so it just gives it a little bit of something. Now, if you had another jelly roll of a different fabric collection, you could easily do these stripes in prints and maybe, these stripes in prints, and then maybe you'd want to do where I have these solids, maybe you'd want to use a white solid and then a dark background. You could give it a completely different look depending on your fabric choices. And I think it would be a lot of fun to play around a little bit with this design with some different fabric choices. So those are the new Coriander Seeds quilts. You got a little bit of a peek at the fabrics. If you missed my last video on the Coriander Seeds fabrics, where I talked just about the fabrics and showed you some up close pictures of those, make sure that you check that video out. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I will be back again next time.